Whenever I feature fancy equipment on the channel, there's usually one or two people in the comments that are talking about sim racing being pay to win. So today's video hopes to address that by comparing an entry-level wheel and pedal set against something a little bit more premium. Hello fellow sim racers, let's start the video by just being straight up and answering the question. No, based on my testing, expensive equipment doesn't make you faster. But there is a bit more nuance to the story than that, and I'd like to demonstrate a few key differences between a really popular entry-level wheel and pedal set and my direct drive setup. And more importantly, the difference in the driving style they promote. So let's meet the contenders. For the video, I borrowed a brand new Logitech G29 set. This is still by far the most popular wheel and pedal combination on the market, and as such it makes for a great point of comparison. At £200 all in, there are cheaper wheel and pedal sets on the market, but most fall into the so bad it's not really worth bothering category. At the other end of the spectrum is the open SimWheel direct drive setup that I've been using for around 18 months. It's paired with a set of Fanatec Club Sport V3 pedals with the performance brake kit, a Sim Racing Coach GT1 Pro button box, and the Turn Racing R20 wheel that I reviewed on the channel last month. Again, there are higher end products available, from the likes of Bodner or Husingveld, but at north of £2,000 this is plenty expensive enough to illustrate my point. Moreover, with equipment like this, the law of diminishing returns really quickly sets in, but more about that later. Finally, no other part of the rig has been changed between tests, and honestly, as long as your wheel and pedals are securely fixed in place, there's no difference in lap time between the fanciest carbon fibre cockpit setup and the most humble of desk clamps. Rather than talk too much about it, let's just jump in and take a look at a hot lap that I ran with both setups in Assetto Corsa. While neither of these laps is absolutely nailed on perfect, they're more than good enough to show that, at least at my skill level, there's little to choose between the two wheels. I gave myself 30 minutes of practice with each setup and then recorded a quick qualifying simulation at the end. And as you can see, the laps are very close indeed. In fact, the total time difference of around 1/10 of a second could more than be explained by slight variations in my driving. Ultimately, this is in no way scientific, but I think it does illustrate that spending 10 times as much on one setup doesn't really yield any lap time. Where things do get interesting though is watching the control inputs. If we take a look at the same lap with the two wheels side by side, there are some key differences. First up, I didn't feel the need to wear gloves to protect my G29, which was a nice change. But more importantly, you can see that in the case of the OSW, I'm making a lot more small movements with the wheel than I am with the G29. The much more powerful and, more importantly, faster force feedback inputs of the direct drive wheel were allowing me to feel many more nuances in the interaction between the car and the road, essentially allowing me to dance the car around on the limit of grip a lot easier. Conversely, with the G29 there are fewer micro corrections, and that leads me to my biggest takeaway from this testing. After 18 months of direct drive use, my sim driving style has adapted to make use of the fidelity of data that the wheel can provide. When I used the G29 exclusively for a couple of weeks of testing, it took me a very long time to get back up to pace and adapt my driving to suit. And the biggest adaptation was not being able to rely as much on the data from my fingertips, and thereby having to compensate with visual information. This culminates in having to learn the grip limit and remember it, rather than pushing up to the limit, feeling it, and then immediately adapting. But ultimately, once I'd put the necessary practice in, I was pretty much always able to get back onto my old pace, though some cars were much harder than others. I've exclusively spoken about the wheels so far because, well, that's where all of the visual differences lie, and that makes for a better video. But I've spoken at length about the value of load cells in brake pedals, and my G29 vacation hasn't changed my mind at all. Finding the braking threshold is much harder without a load cell, or perhaps I should say finding it consistently is harder. But as with the steering, I felt it was a case of learning the limit rather than feeling. Before I bring things together here, a couple of caveats. As mentioned before, this video demonstration is not intended to be at all scientific. My accompanying words are based off my own observations over the last few weeks of testing the G29 and having tested many budget and boutique systems over the years. So it could all be down to my driving style, my biases, or any number of other factors that I've failed to control for. So first of all, to address the video title again, sim racing really isn't pay to win. In my experience, high-end equipment doesn't make you faster, and various leaderboard challenges that log the equipment that's been used do back this up. Furthermore, there are plenty of alien drivers still using many year old Logitech G25s. However, I still maintain that load cell pedals and direct drive wheels in particular do have worthwhile benefits from a competition perspective. First of all, the increased quality of feel that you gain from these devices does allow for a quicker learning curve in my experience, and perhaps more importantly, it aids in consistency. I made a lot more small errors on the G29 setup even after hours of practice than I would on my main rig. And that's one of the big advantages of direct drive wheels. It's very easy to feel a small change in grip and correct your steering angle to prevent it turning into either under or oversteer that eventually ends up costing you time. So then, spending thousands on a sim racing rig is a waste of time. Well, yeah, if your only goal is to go faster, then there are probably better ways to spend your money. But if you value immersion, feel, feedback, and that often underrated influence of gear acquisition syndrome, then of course there's a lot of reward in high-end equipment. And besides, I'm clearly in no position to judge. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.